Hey guys, we're back with another video. So a lot of people have been asking me lately, they're like, hey, what class should I play? I'm new, I'm trying to learn and get better at the game. And I always tell them I think fighter is the best class to play. It's the most well-balanced class and the easiest to pick up, and especially when you're trying to learn PvE still. So yeah, we're going to go over a fighter guide. This is going to be fighter shield mastery, focused around using a heater shield. And we're going to just pretty much go through it here. Teach you guys the ropes. Let's get it. All right. So first things first, let's go into the build you should be running, or what the options are for you to run. So fighter's really strong. The primary stats that they use is dex for attack speed, vigor for health, strength for damage, and agility for movement speed. So depending on how you want to build your class depends on what stats you want to prioritize. We're simply just going to be using Squire Gear because this is a beginner's guide, and typically most new people aren't going to have money for gear, or they won't even be able to buy gear from Marketplace because they're not legendary status yet. So we're going to go over just Squire Gear, what you can equip, and what would help you out in the dungeon as a good kit, starter, shield mastery fighter. And before we get started, if you do not have all of this Squire Gear, you got to complete your quests here, which I still got to work on my fighter as well. For the quests, each time you can complete a full set of quest line, you unlock more armor. So like for the armor, you complete a quest line, you get more actual plate armor. Tailor, you complete a quest line, you get more cloth armor. Leathersmith, same thing, you get more leather armor. So that's essentially how you do that. Same with weaponsmith and weapons. Each time you get a certain bracket finished, you get more Squire Gear. So, but I don't have much Squire Gear here on my fighter yet because I primarily play Warlock. But we're going to build a guide anyway. Teach you guys how to do this here. So, honestly, since there's been a lot of changes with fighter recently, this last important update, they decreased the amount of move speed penalty for all plate. So, it makes plate really strong because you can move faster in plate. So this is definitely going to be a plate build. This is going to be a plate fighter with shield mastery. So first two pieces right off the bat, plate pants you're going to want to run. And then for the boots, typically there's a few you can run, right? There's heavy boots with strength. There's adventure boots with dexterity. Rugged isn't the best. It gives vigor, but honestly, I rarely use rugged. It just doesn't seem worth it. And then there's also plate boots, which give you strength and huge PDR. Projectile damage reduction, and stuff like that. But just keep in mind, when you're wearing this plate, this gives you minus magic resistance, right? So say, for an example, we just want to go full plate. Find Cuirass, heavy gauntlets, and then we'll throw on Hound Skull, right? Say we throw on this kit, you're like, okay, cool, I'm really tanky, I'm really beefy, 35% PDR. But take a look at the magic resistance here, minus 15. That means if you're encountering a Warlock, a Wizard, if you're encountering anybody, you're just going to get creamed. It's going to be big damage. Same with Cleric. So you got to make sure you're fairly balanced. You want to minimally have at least 20% magic resistance if you can. Might be harder to do in Squire Gear, but you're definitely you need magic resistance because you're just going to get melted, especially with the kiting and ranged meta of casters. It's really important to have magic resistance. So we're going to take this stuff off here, and we're going to try and work in some magic resistance stats here. So I typically like to run Dark Plate because you get 43 magic resistance as opposed to Find Curse gives you negative 10. So this is huge for countering some caster classes. It gives you a big chunk of magic resistance. As far as the gloves go, you got light gauntlets, minus 5, and you got heavy gauntlets, which is both minus 5 on magic resistance. So there's not really much you can work with there. If you do want to save more magic resistance, you could definitely run reinforced gloves or riveted gloves. Just keep in mind you have less armor from it, and you don't get the projectile damage resistance, which actually comes in clutch sometimes, especially with the ranged meta and stuff. But for this kit, we're going to run riveted gloves with dark plate armor, plate pants, and plate boots. So this is minus 10 magic resistance, but this is plus 43 magic resistance. So we put this on here and we check out our stats. We're at 13 magic resistance instead of minus 15, so that's huge. But do keep in mind, the PDR is way less, 22.5, but we still can add a headpiece here. So let's look at the best headpiece we could probably run here for magic resistance. So Hound Skull gives you minus 10, but you do have a lot of other options. The reason why Hound Skull is so good because it has the highest headshot production or damage reduction. It's 23%. That's what makes it really good, but it has the minus magic resistance, which is kind of like the issue. But if you wanted to run a helmet, your best bet you can run a few. Armet is really good because it has strength and it does not have minus magic resistance. So that's an option. If you want to move a little quicker, you can run Chappelle, and this also gives you plus magic resistance. So this is definitely an option, but it does give you slightly less armor rating. So if we throw this on, say this is our full kit, we will be at 26.7%, which is not the greatest for full plate, but do keep in mind though, when we equipped your sword and shield, your shield is going to have armor on it as well. So with your shield out, you'll probably be over 32% PDR, which is decent. And that's not even including the perks that we're going to put on here. So I think this is decent. Our movement speed is 90.6, which is not the fastest, but you know, you just got to work with what you have. The more you level up your Squire Gear, the better your gear will be. So this is just with standard here, so everybody can kind of make the same build, the new players. Yeah, but we'll run this right now, 91%. Let's get into the weapons here. What weapons should we throw on here? So you have a few options. You could run Longsword if you're really good at pairing. That's a decent option. You can also run Falchion with Heater Shield, which is what I recommend for a lot of new players. Because with this, the Heater Shield's really good at blocking arrows, spells. It's good for counterattack when you throw your perks on, stuff like that. So we're going to be running the Falchion with the Heater Shield here. And then for the secondary, this is going to be where you put your bow or crossbow or whatever. But before we get into this, let's go into our perks here. So this is our primary loadout. We got the armor, we got the weapon and shield. Let's go into our perks here, because the perks are going to decide exactly what certain weapons and armor that you use. This is going to be specifically shield mastery. So the first thing we're going to throw on is shield mastery. Shield mastery, while in defensive stance, gain 10% movement speed when you successfully block an attack. Gain 50% action speed towards your next block, which is huge, right? So you hold up your shield, they hit your shield, you instantly can swing and hit them back and then pull your shield back up, which is really nice, because if you can keep getting the block and hitting and striking, it's really nice. You can prevent yourself from getting damaged, and you can do quick poke attacks. And that's also why Arming Sword is really good to use with shield mastery too, because of how quickly it swings. But Falchion definitely works as well. But with this, you're definitely going to want to run Barricade. So Barricade gives you 50 armor and 50 magic resistance in defensive stance. Defensive stance is when you have your shield up, or if you're using Longsword when you're holding your parry, that's also a defensive stance. So you'll also get this 50 armor and 50 magic resistance bonus, which is, this is pretty insane, because see, I have 150 armor right now. 150 divided by 3 is 50. So, and this divided by 3 is what? 8%. So in Barricade, you get an extra 8% PDR reduction, which would bump you up to 35%, not including the shield out. So you could probably get to almost 40% PDR while you're in defensive stance, which is pretty good. So, and that's really nice. And that's also with this too, you get the 50 magic resistance. You'll get roughly another 10. So you'll be around 25% magic resistance, 40% PDR with Shield Master or Barricade on. So that's really nice. The next thing you can run, there's a couple options here. So this all depends on how you want to play. The three that will work well here, there's Sword Mastery. When using a sword type weapon, gain 2 weapon damage, 5% action speed. Also gain 10 additional movement speed when taking a defensive stance. So you can move a little quicker. Your sword hits a little harder, and you have quicker swings, essentially, with Sword Mastery. The other one here is Swift. So you see how my movement is really low right now? 272, 90.6%. Swift reduces the armor move speed penalty by 20%. So essentially, the more heavy you are, the more PDR you have, the lighter you are. So you gain movement speed back. So if we throw this on here, we go from 90.6 to 92.5. So you get roughly a 2% movement speed increase. Whether that's worth it for you is kind of up to you. You know, it only gives about 6 move speed, but you know, I'll let y'all decide whether you want to throw that on. But one I believe you're going to want to take is counterattack. So counterattack is when you successfully block an attack, gain 10% move speed and 10% action speed for 3 seconds. This is huge because counterattack and shield mastery stack. So like when you get 20% move speed when you block an attack, and you also get 60% action speed towards your next swing, which is really good. Your counterattack is insanely fast, and when you're holding your shield up, you move really quickly as well. That's the 20%, 10% each from each perk that you get move speed bonus. So this is typically what I run. I run these 3 perks mandatory. Then the last perk, you can kind of decide what you want to do. You know, there's Sword Mastery for the little bit of damage, action speed, move speed. There's Swift if you want to move a little quicker. It reduces the armor penalty. And then there's Weapon Mastery, which I typically run. Crossbows are nice in this game because crossbows are default fighter, but I like running bows because typically you want to shoot as often as you can. When you're fighting experienced players, they sometimes don't give you the chance to reload your crossbow. Or if you take cover real quick, reload crossbow, that gives them the opportunity to push and reposition and put you at a disadvantage. That's why bow is so nice, because you can, shoot your bow, six to eight shots and then reload. But yeah, weapon mastery, gain the ability to use any weapon while using a non-native weapon to your class, lose 10% physical damage bonus. So your bow is going to do a little less damage compared to like a ranger, but it's totally worth it too, because when you throw on the bows do have armor pen. So 20% armor pen on longbow, 10% on recurve, and then you have 5% on survival bow. And it also gives you the ability to use windlass if you want. 40% armor pen. This thing hits like a truck, but the reload is really slow. So, but crossbow's default. You don't need this perk to run crossbow. But for all these, you need to run weapon mastery. So typically, I like to run longbow or survival bow. Typically, probably not survival bow in Squire Gear or poor gear. So I'll probably go with longbow just because longbow has 20% armor pen, which is really good. So we'll throw that on. Also, I forgot to mention, when you put your weapon mastery on, you go back to your Squire, and then it gives you the ability to equip all the weapons that weren't here before. Like there's crystal sword you can use, magic staff you can use, all this stuff. Recurve's now in here, so you don't have to actually go into the shop and spend money on it. But this is pretty much the loadout I typically run. We finished our perks out, so this is how I'm going to run it. As far as skills go, second wind is almost... You, as a fighter, you pretty much have to use second wind. Second wind is just... It's too good not to use. Recover 40% maximum health over 12 seconds. Additionally, second wind removes the negative effects of adrenaline rush. Also, if you bring campfires in, you sit at a campfire, it recharges your second wind. Keep in mind, which is really nice. And before, they nerfed sprint, and it was really bad, and you had to pick something else, but they just rebuffed sprint. Before, it would give a flat 20% move speed. Now, you gain 3 stacks of momentum, granting 15 additional move speed per stack. Lose 1 stack every 2 seconds. Essentially, you start with 45 move speed. 2 seconds later, you drop down to 30 move speed. 2 seconds later, you drop down to 15 move speed for 2 seconds, and then it expires. So, essentially, this sprint lasts 6 seconds, and every 2 seconds, you drop 15 move speed. But it's way better than it was before, only giving a flat 20 move speed. So I highly recommend running sprint, especially if you're heavy like this and you have really low move speed. But this is pretty much the build, the starting build you can run as fighter. Obviously, there's different equipment that you could use. You upgrade your Squire, you can get better stuff, and also you start saving up gold. Then you can get into some crazy gear, which I'll probably drop other videos on actual geared fighters because it kind of changes the game. Because with like a juicy kit like this, you'll have much more armor, and if you grab double agility rolls on all the plate, you'll be moving extremely quickly in full plate, which changes the game entirely. But yeah, this is pretty much the starter kit. Equipments, perks, skills that you want to run. Make sure that when you go into the dungeon to go over to the woodsman here and bring a campfire with you, because campfire comes in clutch. Make sure to bring potions and bandages. And also, don't forget to bring your arrows, because you do not want to forget your arrows. One thing to keep in mind, it does give you a recurve here too, right? So say you don't have any arrows and you don't want to buy some. Equip the recurve here once you have weapon mastery on. Set it, equipped it, and then it gives you arrows. And then you could just take that off and you can sell it. But it gives you your free arrows, so you don't have to spend, 20 gold per stack. So yeah, that's essentially how you do that. But yeah, this is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, drop a comment down below. Hop in the Discord if you need help with anything. DM me. I'm getting a lot of notifications and messages and stuff, but I'm trying my best to help everybody out because I know there's a lot of new people and they have a lot of questions. But everyone's been hella supportive, and I appreciate y'all. Yeah, if you have any specific builds that you have a question about or like me to run, drop in a comment down below. And we're going to get into some PvP here so you can kind of see exactly how you should be using fighter. But yeah, like the video. Let's get the PvP here.